in the path of danger, instinct seems to summon her finest first, those who truly understand her. When freedom shivers in the cold shadow of true peril, it's always the patriots first hear the call. When loss of liberty is looming, as it is now, the siren sounds first in the hearts of freedom's vanguard, who come from their simple homes to find the fire and fight. That symbolizes the full measure of human dignity and liberty.
Remember real clear years ago in the swamps of South Georgia. Cane full of crossmen in my hands, all I needed to be growed up. Homemade ice cream and barbecue and the family on Friday nights. 10-lane ramp on Saturday right before the morning light. Came a time I was old enough and I learned about the gun. And every night in summertime I answered to what I'd done. Who's today what we got about the way it used to be? They got no respect and no cold steel, just games on TV. A burning hell before I sell my rights away from me. It's high time we embrace the tool that keeps all men free.
Good morning, Revolution Radio listeners. The sun is rising across this great United States, and that means straight from the heart of Texas. It is time for Clayton Douglas, the Free American. Take it away, Clayton.
From the heart of Texas. Well, not quite. On the coast of Texas this week, and down in Corpus Christi, but beautiful place anyway. Texas is a whole nother country. And I want to talk about something today that might get me lynched here in Texas, because what I want to talk about is one of the people that are responsible for the situation we find ourselves in today. Right now, it can be traced back to a coup in this country. A coup like that most people simply aren't aware of. But it ain't exactly popular. Won't be popular in Texas, because I'm going to be talking about one of the heroes of Texas in most people's eyes, because they were controlled by the media. I'm talking about, well, I'll get to that in a moment here. Let's go back to about 1955. Now, we could go back a lot further than that. We could go back to the Balfour Declaration, when England gave the land of Palestine to the Jews. And we could go back and we could talk about the hit squads, the terrorist organizations that were made up by the Jews, a lot of them from the Soviet Union, and a lot of them had been responsible for killing 60 million white Christian Russians. But let's skip forward a little bit. We'll remember we were allied against Hitler, against the Germans, after the National Jewish Congress declared war on Germans, not just Hitler, but all Germans. They put a notice out that they were declaring war on Germans. They started boycotting their goods. Fine German products were taken out of Macy's and Gimbels and those kind of places. But after the UN gave parts of Palestine to Israel, Israel immediately, the Jews immediately started spreading out and trying to spread their rule by terrorism. They were attacks on the British, King David Hotel, and the stage was then set for the Suez Crisis in 1955. That was when the Eisenhower administration began pressuring Israel to demonstrate its commitment to peace in the Middle East. On February 28, 1955, President Gamal Abdel Nasser made a speech full of warnings against Israeli atrocities. He emphasized a bloody raid on the Gaza Strip by the Israelis, allegedly a retaliation for raids made from Gaza. Nasser was upset with the United States for denying his request for arms a few months earlier. In his speech, he repeated the request for Egypt to buy arms, but was ignored. On September 4, 1955, Egypt announced it had received a proposal from the Soviet Union for an arms sale. The Eisenhower administration treated this as an idle threat, which angered Nasser. As a result, he brokered a cotton for arms barter agreement with Czechoslovakia in September 27th, in which Egypt received $200 million worth of arms, tanks, MiG planes, artillery, submarine, and small arms. Israel immediately renewed its joint arms agreement with the United States, France, and Britain. In addition, Israel requested a treaty guaranteeing its security, but was denied by the Western powers because they knew Israel's military strength was vastly superior to the neighboring Arab nations. On August 26, 1955, Secretary of State John Foster Dulles made a speech before the Council of Foreign Relations in New York, in which he outlined terms for peace in the Middle East. He stated that the problem of Palestinian refugees could be solved, but Israel should not be expected to assume the full cost. He proposed that Congress approve an international loan to finance the resettlement or repatriation of Palestinian refugees. The loan would also help develop irrigation projects to assist refugees in cultivating their land for crops. The Israelis were somewhat agitated by Dulles' speech because he mentioned a possible boundary revision. Thus, Dulles promptly responded to clarify the American position. He stated that in no uncertain terms that if Sheraton Ben-Gurion, the Israeli leaders, wanted American diplomatic, political, and military aid, they would have to demonstrate their peaceful intentions by helping resolve the sensitive problems of Palestinian refugees and border disputes. On November 9th, President Eisenhower, who was in a Denver hospital convalescing from a heart attack, confirmed Dulles' position in a formal statement made from his hospital bed. At that point, it became clear that the United States could no longer be counted on to support Israel's continuing efforts to expand its borders. Consequently, Israel turned to the European powers for support. Over the next year, trouble began to arise over the Suez Canal. This should give you a little idea, folks, of how long this has been going on. And keep in mind that nobody really understood in the 50s that Israel's goal was the same as it was back in the early 1900s, or actually maybe the late 1800s, when the Jews tried to form the first League of Nations, the first attempt at one world government. That attempt failed. And so what we got was the Jews, the Bolsheviks, most of the Jews in the Soviet Union had been settled in their original homeland now called the Pale, was known as Khazaria along the Black Sea region. They killed the Tsar, and they drove the Jews, turned the Jews loose from the beyond the Pale to form the Soviet Union, to form the gulags, to murder 60 million white Russians. Then with the Balfour Declaration, keep in mind, England had no right to give away this, but they formed the UN, and the rest is pretty much history. But on August 26th, after John Foster Dulles made that speech before Council on Foreign Relations, it became clear that the United States could no longer be counted on to support Israel's continuing efforts to expand its borders. The Suez Canal is a sea-level waterway running north and south along across the Isthmus of Suez in Egypt to connect the Mediterranean and Red Seas. The canal separates the African continent from Asia and provides the shortest seagoing route from Europe and the lands laying around the Indian and Western Pacific Ocean. It is one of the world's most heavily used shipping lanes. On July 26, 1956, Egyptian President Nasser angered Israel and the European powers when he nationalized the Suez Canal. He took this bold action because he felt that friends of Israel and America had cheated him out of U.S. aid for the Aswan Dam that Egypt needed for irrigation and power. The dam cost $1.3 billion, and Nasser had been given the impression by the Eisenhower administration that U.S. aid would be forthcoming. However, friends of Israel in America pressured the Senate Appropriations Committee into blocking funding for the dam. On July 16, 1956, funding was officially denied, much to the chagrin of President Eisenhower and Secretary of State John Foster Dulles. To make matters worse, the State Department issued a statement on July 19th critically appraising Egypt's international credit. Nasser felt this was a ruse created by friends of Israel and America, and he responded by seizing control of the canal and nationalizing the Suez Canal Company in order to obtain funding for the dam. On October 29th, 1956, Israel attacked Egypt and advanced towards the Suez Canal. On November 1st, the British and French forces also invaded Egypt and began occupation of the Canal Zone, but growing opposition from Eisenhower and Dulles and UN Secretary Dag Hammarskjöld and the Soviet threats of intervention put an immediate stop to French and British support, but Israeli troops still occupied the Gulf of Aqaba and the Gaza Strip in defiance of the UN resolution. Eisenhower was so angered by European involvement in the attack that he telephoned British Prime Minister Anthony Eden and gave him such a tongue lashing that the Prime Minister was reduced to tears. Eisenhower told Dulles, "Foster, you tell them, God damn it, we're going to apply sanctions, we're going to the United Nations, we're going to do everything there is to stop this thing." He later explained, "We just told the Israelis it was absolutely indefensible, and that if they expect our support in the Middle East and in maintaining their position, they better behave. We went to town right away to give them hell." U.S. Secretary General Dag Hammarskjöld shared Eisenhower's view that Israel needed to learn to behave. Consequently, Hammarskjöld and Ben-Gurion engaged in some heated exchanges after the UN Secretary General publicly condemned Israel for its retaliatory actions against the Palestinians. In 1956, Ben-Gurion complained that Hammarskjöld's remarks had encouraged assaults on Israel by Egypt and Jordan. Hammarskjöld replied You are convinced that their threat of retaliation has a deterrent effect. I am convinced that it is more of an incitement to individual members of the Arab forces than even what has been said by their own governments. You are convinced that acts of retaliation will stop further incidents. I am convinced they will lead to further incidents. You believe that this way of creating respect for Israel will pave the way for sound coexistence with the Arab people. I believe that the policy may postpone indefinitely the time for such coexistence. I think the discussion of this question can be considered closed since you, in spite of discouraging experiences, have taken the responsibility of large-scale tests of the correctness of your belief. On February 2nd, 1957, UN General Assembly passed a resolution demanding Israel's withdrawal from the Gulf of Aqaba and the Gaza Strip. But Ben-Gurion refused. Fed up with Israel's treachery, Eisenhower wrote a strong letter to Ben-Gurion demanding Israel's withdrawal. Still, Ben-Gurion refused. And February 1957, Lyndon Baines Johnson rescued Israel from UN sanctions. It had been rumored that UN Secretary Hammarskjöld of Sweden was quietly pushing for sanctions with the full support of the Eisenhower administration against Israel if it continued to maintain troops in the Gulf of Aqaba and Gaza in defiance of the U.S. and UN demands for immediate withdrawal. In response, Lyndon Johnson, then Senate Majority Leader, wrote a letter to Secretary of State John Foster Dulles urging the Eisenhower administration not to support UN sanctions against Israel. Johnson's letter to Dulles appeared in the New York Times, Jewish-controlled, on February 20, 1957. The Senate Majority Leader's argument was that it was an unfair double standard to punish a country like Israel when large countries like the Soviet Union were allowed to openly defy UN resolutions without being punished. In addition, Johnson rallied Senate Democrats to oppose Israel sanctions. He used partisan politics to pressure Eisenhower into retreating from the principle, but Eisenhower stood his ground and kept applying pressure to Israel by cutting off or delaying financial assistance. When Israel began to run out of money in March 1957, Prime Minister David Ben-Gurion finally agreed to withdraw troops from the occupied territories. Eisenhower triumphed, but Johnson had protected Israel from the humiliation of UN sanctions. Sadly, Eisenhower was the last president to stand up to the Israeli government and its American supporters. At least he proved it could be done. Ironically, one of the best accounts of Lyndon Johnson's involvement in the Suez Canal was written by Louis Bloomfield in his 1957 book entitled Egypt, Israel, and the Gulf of Aqaba. In the ensuing years, Johnson's involvement in that conflict had been erased from history, though his pro-Israeli stance appeared on the front page of the New York Times on February 20, 1957. His name is not mentioned in Western history books about the Suez Canal, except for Bloomfield's. The power elite within the book publishing industry have apparently been concealing Johnson's loyalty to Israel as a means of preventing inquiries by historians, researchers, and investigators about a possible Jewish conspiracy behind the assassination of President Kennedy years later. Now, this is how Bloomfield described Israel's pro-Israel stance during the Suez Gulf of Aqaba crisis. We've got a little bit of noise, sound like children in the background here. Oh, no, doesn't come from here, and my dogs are in the other room, so.
No, we had another caller that joined us, Clay, but he hung up.
Oh, I'm sorry, I wasn't seeing. You can just break in and tell me if we got a caller. We will take calls. Let me, matter of fact, let me do that. Let me tell you right now, folks, that You can call in at 855-655-8453, extension 805. And I'll take this opportunity to tell you that freedomslips.com has become one of the best talk show stations on the net today, and we have the listeners to thank. Being a 100% listener-supported station gives us the freedom to bring you the hard truth like you're getting today. So if you go to freedomslips.com, click on the support button on the home page to help keep the advertisers away. Well, thank you in advance for support and contributions. And keep in mind that I do this radio show. I'm 100% financed by donations also. Now, or sales of my book. And it's the same thing. If you make a donation, you can get a copy of one of my books. I'm working on 2 more, but we got books to sell. You can get the hard copies, or you can get the PDF. Read the PDF today, and if you want a signed copy, then we'll be glad to sell that to you. If you've got a shop, you can get copies of my books from the publisher, and in doing that, you'll help the Texas independence movement, Texas nationalist movement, and we had 140,000 people that signed a statement that they wanted to step away or withdraw from the United States. Frankly, I don't think, as being a native-born Texan, I don't think we should have ever gave up the Rocky Mountains. I think we should have kept all those ski resorts for ourselves in the old republic. Now, let me take a look here. And, oops. Okay, I just lost that. But if you want to call in, do so. We'll take your calls. And I'll be trying to get back on there. The publisher, and in doing that. Okay, got that back. And this Johnson thing is pretty interesting because I interviewed Johnson's attorney. We got to take a break here.
You're listening to...
Be waiting for you. I think we're taking a break.
Yeah, Clayton, I think that came from you. Go ahead.
Okay, all right. When I interviewed Johnson's attorney, he told me that LBJ had been involved in the Kennedy assassination. You also have people like George Bush that was involved. There was photographs standing outside of the school book depository. I've interviewed and met Marina Oswald's wife. Keep in mind, Oswald was killed by a Jewish gangster by the name of Jack Ruby. And we've got other patsies like Oswald, like Tim McVeigh, who were set up by the Mossad. Sandy Hook was set up by the Mossad. And this whole Boston thing, it's falling apart on them. That's the, well, it's the same thing. It's false flag attacks that they were George Bush that was involved. There was photographs standing.
You're listening to Revolution Radio.
I think I've got this off here. All right. Just I lost Freedom Slips, the chat room. But if you're a troll in the chat room, am I one of those militia types? You're damn right I am. I helped start the whole militia movement with my magazine, Free American, and I immediately got attacked by the Jewish types. That is the ADL and Southern Poverty Law, and you want to know what that is? Well, you can go to my website, freeamerican.com, and you can check that out. That I've got 8 segments of films about the ADL, about their formation, how they were formed after a Jew raped a young woman here and got hung. Oh, there we go. Yeah, okay. Glad I got back here because I've got idiots on here that that's their name for themselves. So what do I know, huh? I will ignore all of those people, so I don't have to look at them anymore. That's it. They're gone. And yep. See, we got. No, I'm not having any technical difficulties. And if your naval intelligence there, well, there's the Navy's done some good work, except in the case of Israel, in the case of Johnson. Now let's go back to that. I will be, yep, the Zionists are the problem, but even before the Zionists helped set up this whole deal with Israel. And LBJ was one of the, he was Jewish. His family was Jewish. His wife, Lady Bird, was Jewish. And I'll get into that a little bit later. This is why he sold out our Navy, our soldiers, in the USS Liberty. I'm just getting up to this because the Suez thing, the Gaza thing, the Israelis trying to spread their one world government. The Israel was, and the Balfour Declaration came from England, Israel was a Rothschild colony. A Rothschild colony. And that's all contained in my book, Mystery Babylon, The New World Order Unveiled. You check that out. You check that out. Meanwhile, we'll have Larry Pratt coming up from Gun Owners of America. And let's go back to the statement of John Foster Dulles in 1957. Now, keep in mind, the power elite, the Jewish-owned book publishing company, have been concealing Johnson's loyalty to Israel about a possible connection to Kennedy's assassination, President Kennedy. But on February 11th, John Foster Dulles submitted certain proposals to the Israeli government which were, in effect, that Israel should withdraw her troops from the Gulf of Aqaba and the Gaza Strip, according to the recommendations of the United Nations General Assembly. The United States should use its influence to establish the Strait of Tehran and the Gulf of Aqaba as an international waterway for the innocent passage of all nations, including Israel. Meanwhile, the United States should do everything it could to see that United Nations troops replaced Israeli troops in the Gaza Strip in that area should become a kind of de facto United Nations trusteeship where United Nations officials would watch and possibly stop any fighting between Israel and Egypt. Subsequent discussions of the United States between the United States Secretary of State and Mr. Ada Iban did not bring about the withdrawal of the Israeli forces from these two areas, and rumors began to circulate in the American press that the Afro-Asian bloc would introduce resolutions calling for economic and military sanctions to force Israel to comply. On February 19, 1957, Senator Lyndon Baines Johnson, the Senate Majority Leader, wrote to John Foster Dulles urging that the United States oppose imposing of economic sanctions against Israel. The letter was endorsed by the Senate Democratic Committee, and I might remind you that the Democrats, the Communist Party of the United States, said they didn't have to do anything because the Democrats had taken over every stance that they wanted. Now, in 1957, John F. Kennedy, then a U.S. Senator, made a speech called Facing Facts on Algeria, which denounced France's colonial occupation of Algeria and the brutality of the French-Algerian War. This speech also demonstrated an understanding of Indochina, which would likely have prevented him from escalating military involvement in Vietnam had he not been killed. Historian Richard Mahoney summarized the speech and events that preceded and followed it. In early '57, Kennedy decided to make a major critique of the Eisenhower administration position on France's colonial war in Algeria. By 1957, the French had committed over 500,000 troops in the effort to suppress a nationalist rebellion. Torture, atrocity, and terror on both sides had turned the pride of France's empire into a chamber of horrors. The Eisenhower administration had been maintaining a strict policy of silence on Algeria, at least until Kennedy's attack, which the New York Times called the most comprehensive and outspoken arraignment of public policy towards Algeria yet presented by an American in public office. On July 2, 1957, Kennedy accused the Eisenhower administration of courting disaster in Algeria. He charged that Eisenhower's policy of non-involvement in Africa and Asia was really made up of tepid encouragement and moralization to both sides, cautious neutrality on all the real issues, and a restatement of our obvious dependence upon our European friends and our obvious dedication, nevertheless, to the principles of self-determination and our obvious desire not to become involved. The result, Kennedy said, was that we have deceived ourselves into believing that we have thus pleased both sides and displeased no one, when in truth we've earned the suspicion of all. The previous decade had proved that the tide of nationalism in the third world from Indochina to India to Indonesia was irresistible, Kennedy declared. It was time for France to face the fact that Algeria had to be freed. When would the West learn, he asked, that colonies are like ripe fruit that cling to the tree only till they ripen? Didn't the French debacle in Indochina, which ended at Aden Ben Phu, serve as a warning of what lay ahead for France if something were not done? Referring to lessons that should have been learned from France's Indochina debacle, Kennedy stated, Did that tragic episode not teach us, whether France likes it or not, admits it or not, or has our support or not, that their overseas territories are sooner or later, one by one, going to break free and look upon with suspicion upon the Western nations upon the Western nations who impeded their steps to independence. Now you see, email just came in. The scholarly group votes to support a boycott of Israel. It's all happening over and over and over again, folks, and it's all centered around Israel, our support of Israel. And you can see now that Vietnam was brewing here because the French were being kicked out of Vietnam. We don't know who the communists were. We do know that we got involved, that our strike teams went over and stirred the pot. But Kennedy was warning about this. He said nationalism in Africa cannot be evaluated purely in terms of the historical and legal niceties argued by the French and thus accepted by the State Department. National self-identification frequently takes place by quick combustion, which the reign of repression simply cannot extinguish. In the United States, a storm of protest greeted Kennedy's address on Facing the Facts on Algeria. Eisenhower complained that the young men are getting up and shouting about things. Secretary of State John Foster Dulles commented acidly that if the senator wanted to tilt against colonialism, he might concentrate on the communist variety. Most prominent Democrats were equally scornful. Adlai Stevenson dismissed Kennedy's speech as terrible. Dean Acheson described the speech as foolish words that wound a dispirited ally. In France, the speech provoked an even more furious outcry. Paris' largest daily said it's shameful that our business is so badly directed we're forced to endure such idiocies. The U.S. News and World Report noted that an American has unified France against himself. Responding to Kennedy's speech, French President René Coty told the French Senate that France would never negotiate with cutthroats since independence would give the 1,200,000 Europeans living in Algeria one alternative: leaving their homeland or living at the mercy of fanaticism. French Defense Minister André Morcy publicly wondered whether Kennedy was having nightmares. Talk of independence, Morcy said, will cost many more innocent lives. Harvard historian Arthur Schlesinger reported to Kennedy from Paris that summer that Algeria is beginning to poison France, and Algeria itself, feeling among European colonists against the speech, ran so high that French authorities warned American newsmen and residents to stay off the streets to avoid reprisals. 2 days after the speech, a bomb exploded outside the American consulate in Algiers. A French resident minister in Algiers, Robert Lacoste, called the bomb a communist joke and challenged Kennedy to come to Algeria. The senator declined. Practically no one in the American foreign policy establishment regarded the Algerian speech as anything more than a bipartisan political blast designed to attract attention, but foreign correspondents such as Alistair Cook of the Manchester Guardian and Henry Pierre of Le Monde recognized what their American counterparts had not, that Kennedy knew what he was talking about on the third world issues. In a letter to the editor of New York Times, Pierre wrote, strangely enough, as a Frenchman, I feel that on the whole Mr. Kennedy is more to be commended than blamed for his forthright, frank, and provocative speech. Although Le Monde opposed Kennedy's call for Algerian independence, it identified the senator as one of the few serious students of history and American politics. The most striking point of the speech of Mr. Kennedy is the important documentation it revealed and his thorough knowledge of the French. Now, he was critical of Eisenhower administration. However, the political dynamic involved must be considered. Kennedy's views about Israel and the Middle East in general were closer to Eisenhower's than Johnson's. Having stated that, it is significant to understand that Kennedy's public endorsement of an independent Algeria was a subtle criticism of Israel. It's widely known that Israel opposed Algeria's independence because it Israel, wanted to suppress or dominate all Muslim Arab states. Although Eisenhower had not publicly supported Algerian independence, it seemed plausible that he may have agreed with Kennedy but lacked the political courage to denounce France as the young senator had boldly done in his speech. Upon reflection, Eisenhower may have secretly admired Kennedy for publicly denouncing America's World War II ally. After all, France had recently betrayed Eisenhower by secretly conniving with Israel and Britain to attack Egypt after President Nasser had nationalized the Suez Canal. Kennedy surely understood how much he and Eisenhower agreed on Middle Eastern issues, but Eisenhower belonged to the opposing political party, and Johnson and Kennedy both had their eyes on the White House in the upcoming 1960 presidential election. Consequently, one of Kennedy's objectives when making the Algerian speech was likely to differentiate himself from the sitting Republican president and his Democratic adversary, Johnson. Eisenhower was a Republican and made sense politically for a Democratic senator to criticize him for not supporting Algerian independence. The speech also sent a message to inform political observers that unlike Johnson, Kennedy would not be a minion for Israel if elected president. Even more important, his speech made the front page of the New York Times, which put him in the same lead as Senate Majority Leader Johnson. Recall that Johnson had made the front page of the New York Times 5 months earlier for opposing Eisenhower's effort to place UN sanctions on Israel in the wake of that country's failed attempt to seize land from Egypt and overthrow Nasser in the Suez Crisis. And in June 5, 1967, 10 years after the Suez Crisis, Israel attacked Egypt again, but this time with success. The event is known as the Six-Day War, which began on June 5, 1967. Things had changed a great deal over the 10 years leading up to the Six-Day War. Israel's most influential adversaries had either died or left public office. Eisenhower had retired years earlier and was in failing health. John Foster Dulles died of cancer. Dag Hammarskjöld had been killed in a mysterious plane crash. President Kennedy, of course, had been assassinated in Dallas in 1963, and Israel's old ally, Lyndon Johnson, became Commander-in-Chief of the United States in July 1965. President Johnson had appointed Supreme Court Justice Arthur Goldberg as a U.S. ambassador to the UN. Goldberg, a Jew and ardent supporter of Israel, replaced Adlai Stevenson as U.S. delegate to the UN after Stevenson died suddenly of a heart attack. The Yemen War had been eroding Arab unity since the conflict in '62. By 1967, Egyptian forces had suffered heavy losses and were weakened after 5 years of military involvement in the Yemen War. Whether these events were random or planned is anybody's guess, but they were definitely advantageous to Israel by the time the Six-Day War occurred in 1967. That was a watershed event that had transformed Israel from a small nation into a colonial empire. One world government, folks. The New World Order. Although Israel became a nation in 1948, it expanded dramatically after the Six-Day War. Israel took from the Arabs through military force the old city of Jerusalem, Sinai, and the Gaza Strip, Jordanian territory west of the Jordan River known as the West Bank, and the Golan Heights on the Israeli-Syrian border. In addition to acquiring a new land, Israel gained control of an additional 900,000 Arabs who became discontented subjects of the new Israeli empire. Since 1967, the number of Arabs under Israel's military control has grown to over 1.75 million. Amnesty International has documented Israelis' inhumane treatment of the Palestinian subjects, citing arbitrary arrests, torturing detainees, destroying or sealing the homes of Arab suspects and their relatives, confiscating land, destroying crops, diverting precious water from thirsty Palestinians to the desert to fill the swimming pools and water the lawns of Israeli settlers. This conduct is condoned, embraced, and encouraged by the United States through its steadfast military and financial support of Israel. Today, U.S. taxpayers spend approximately $3 billion annually to subsidize, support, and arm Israel, who, although Israel is a wealthy country by Western standards, it received the highest amount of foreign aid money, 28%. And in the America divided Civil War of the 60s, Jewish scholars wrote, the swift and complete victory was followed by a long-wrenching occupation of Palestinian land. For many American Jews, the 1967 conflict awakened and inspired passions that did much to transform the meaning of their identity. No longer was Israel just a reason for Jewish pride, a desert miracle of orange groves and thriving kibbutzes whose creation was romanticized in Exodus, popular novel and film of the 50s. Israel was now the homeland of fellow Jews who had fought alone for their survival and resigned to living in perpetual danger. The threat came not from Arab militants but from communist powers, their third world allies, a good many American leftists who were eager to prove their anti-imperialist credentials. In the face of extinction, Israel became the ultimate reality in the life of every living Jew, as a young professor at Brandeis University put it. In dealing with those who oppose Israel, we are not reasonable and we are not rational, nor should we be. These troubling words reflect the true agenda of those who support the Jewish state of Israel. And keep in mind that it was Johnson that allowed Israel to attack the USS Liberty, and the liberty of the United States has been under attack ever since. I'm going to bring Larry Pratt up here in just a couple of minutes, in a few minutes here. And what we're seeing right now is happening again. Now, Egypt, they got...
Thank you for calling Government of America, the regular...
Okay. He'll get him up.
He's not, I'm trying, Clay. Give me a couple of minutes.
Okay.
Apparently he's still not in the office yet.
Do you need I'll put this home number for you.
He's on his way, Clay. Just give him a couple more minutes.
Okay. All right. Folks, well, let me take this opportunity to tell you this. We're getting this information because nothing changes. Nothing changes. Everything still remains the same. And when I started the militias here to protect Americans, like the people at Waco, I got attacked by the Jewish ADL, the Jewish-run Southern Poverty Law, and I am not allowed on RBN or Genesis after the accident. After they tried to kill me, I wasn't allowed on either of those stations. Nobody tried to help me, even though me and Bill Cooper had been broadcasting nationally for years. Over 10 years. My magazine was distributed for 10 years. And I volunteered for Vietnam. Fortunately, I didn't have to go. Now, let me tell you that freedomslips.com is becoming the best talk show station on the net today because they don't take advertisers. You support it. You, the listener, support it. You make a donation, and that keeps it running. We've got almost 15,000 people listening to it. If all of you just make a small donation, just click on the donate button, it will help. If you send me a donation to Clay at Free American, I will send you a book. I have documented the whole Patriot movement in the New World Order Unveiled, Mystery Babylon. I've documented my involvement in it for the last 25 years. I've documented the Mossad's drug-running operation. CIA and Mossad are the same thing, whether they're Jewish, whether they're American, whatever they are. If they're dual citizens here, folks, they are not working for you. I've got the whole story of the ADL up in 8 segments up on my website right now. And because most of the advertisers are Jewish-owned companies, own RBN, own Genesis, they don't want you to hear this kind of program. They don't want you to hear the truth about LBJ, who helped murder Kennedy, who took over, who was responsible for allowing, for withdrawing the planes from the support of the USS Liberty. I will find some of the USS Liberty people and have them on to tell you what that was about. Johnson covered for him, and Johnson, it has turns out, and I'll cover this later.
Thank you for calling 1097 America. The regular office hours are 9
Still having trouble getting him. Just
Try-
continue for
try
me.
his try his cell phone. Try the cell phone that I sent you.
Okay. Let me try it.
Okay. All right. Let me take a look at the chat room. We'll take a quick little break here, and let me see what's happening in the chat room. Okay. All right. Hello, Larry.
Hello?
Hello, Larry. This is Clay Douglas. Are you
Hey,
on?
Clay.
Are
Good
you?
morning.
Good morning. We tried you at the office, but I thought I'd try you here. Are you on the way in, or can you talk on your cell here?
I'm at the office.
All right, we'll call you right back.
Let me retry the office number, Larry.
I'll look for the call.
Thank you, sir.
Alrighty.
Great. Let's see. All right. Okay, let me get rid of this MK Ultra super idiot. We'll just get rid of him. I don't get rid of him. You can listen to him if you want. I don't have to listen to him. I like this ignore. Trying to get him up here. All right.
Okay, Clay, we're back on the air.
Okay. Do I have Larry on?
No, just give me a second and I will try to get him up. Apparently, I tried to call him and dropped the server. Apologies for that.
That's okay. And let me make sure you got the right number here. Oops. He's trying to call me back, I guess. Somebody's trying to call me back. I can't get it. Hello, Larry? Hello, is this Larry? Try this number, Hans. Okay.
Listen to Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com. We'll be right back after this message.
Wadiya will remain a dictatorship.
More, be quiet.
Why are you guys so anti-dictators? Imagine if America was a dictatorship. You could let 1% of the people have all the nation's wealth. You could help your rich friends get richer by cutting their taxes and bailing them out when they gamble and lose. You could ignore the needs of the poor for healthcare and education. Your media would appear free, but would secretly be controlled by one person and his family. You could wiretap phones. You could torture foreign prisoners. You could have rigged elections. You could lie about why you go to war. You could fill your prisons with one particular racial group, and no one would complain. You could use the media to scare the people into supporting policies that are against their interests.
Tune in Monday through Friday, 4 p.m. Eastern Time for Liberation Nation with Deacon John, where America comes to hear the truth.
I know this is hard for you Americans to imagine, but please try.
Everybody's out of work or scared of losing their job. The dollar buys a nickel's worth. Banks are going bust. Some of us keep a gun under the counter. Cops are running wild in the streets and nobody anywhere seems to know what to do, and there's no end to it. We know the air is unfit to breathe. Our food is unfit to eat. We know things are bad, worse than bad. I want you to get mad. I want you to protest. I don't want you to riot. I don't want you to write to your congressman because I wouldn't know what to tell you to write. I don't know what to do about the depression and the inflation and the Russians and the crying in the street. All I know is that first, you've got to get mad. You've got to say, I'm a human being. God damn it. My life has value. Yo. Be here Monday through Friday, 7 p.m. Eastern Time, and smear at the news with Jason Brentwood. Because when it's time to crush, it's time for Jason. Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com. You don't need to expect us. We're already here.
This is Thomas, a.k.a. a Mad Painter. I'd like you to join me Monday nights, 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for Open Canvas. Don't forget to bring an open mind.
Yes, folks, that's right. Bring an open mind to an open canvas. Again, that is Monday nights, 10 p.m. Eastern. You oppose to government corruption. This is Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com. You don't need to expect us. We're already here.
Now you can share the topics that drive the discussions of your favorite talk shows with TalkStream Live's topic-driven talk radio. List and promote real-time talk radio topics, or post the topics that you want to hear. Hot topics are tweeted and retweeted, and include simple click-to-listen audio links. The future of talk radio is topic-driven talk radio. Available now at TalkStreamLive.com.
Revolution Radio.
You don't see it, do you? How close we are to absolute chaos? The sick ones are sitting on their fat asses, eating and drink themselves into a stupor, polluting the world without a second thought while it goes down the toilet. Nobody wants to do the nasty work. You know, the shit that we all just think about. Most good citizens are just along for the ride, and then bitch and moan and complain about everything when it doesn't work out. Not me. Get it?
Revolution Radio, where we do the nasty. www.freedomslips.com.
Hello?
Hello,
Larry,
Larry.
hang in there for 1 second. We're on the
Okay.
computer, all right?
realize you're caught in a dream. The adventure begins. Put your seatbacks and tray tables in the upright position as we take a trip at the very fabric of reality. Join me, Andrew Bartis, for Adventures into Reality, Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, 10 a.m. to 12 noon at Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com, where information never sleeps.
Is your data safe? Do you have the necessary information to assist you in confidently living through just about any survival situation? Is survival from gardening, off-grid living, medical knowledge, or even natural or man-made EMPs on your list of personal concerns? Do you have your documents and your personal information in a safe place in your hands where you know where it is? Well, check out our preloaded EMP-proof thumb drive. Over 3 gigs of survival documents and how-tos, plus the USDA offline food preservation website, and much, much more, including a surprise bonus we just can't tell you about here. With plenty of room left over to store your most important documents. Imagine if a megavirus or computer failure took out your bank, or all the banks for that matter. Are your banking records safe in your hands? So when they get things fixed and repaired, you can say, hey, look, this is what I had. You have it, I want it back. Is your personal data safe? Family records, addresses, phone numbers? Squeeze on over to freedomslips.com. Yes, that's www.freedomslips.com. Click the banner on the homepage for the EMP-proof bullet drive to get the full scoop of everything that we offer. So, folks, keep your data safe for your peace of mind. Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com. You don't need to expect us. We're already here. Revolution Radio. You're listening to Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, 100% listener-supported radio, and now we return you to your host.
All right, we're back. And my guest today is Larry Pratt from Gun Owners of America. Had a little difficulty reaching you, Larry, but I think we got you now.
Hey, yeah, I'm here.
Well, Larry, I think I've just got to ask you how it feels to be under siege, under attack. Do you feel? Can you identify a little bit right now to the Alamo?
Well, at the Alamo, they had to give up their lives. I've hardly been in such a situation.
Well, you have the Second Amendment has been under attack, probably more now than ever before, and you've been fighting that battle for well over 20 years, haven't you?
Oh, indeed, indeed.
And we've got these, I refer to him, I just had Gordon Duff on, he's Veterans Today, and he was on my show yesterday, and he's talking about that the military has said we've had 3 false flag attacks, and the Sandy Hook was one of those. They certainly, Obama even jumped on that, trying to bring people that we think they lost their lives there. And then we had the Boston thing, supposedly gun battles, and the pictures I saw of Watertown, Massachusetts, kind of brought everything that we've been warning about and talking about to light. They're talking about a police state. Here. We had black-clad troops knocking on people's doors, going into their houses. It was almost like a repeat of New Orleans after the hurricane there. What's happening? From your estimation, I mean, you're there on Congress. We know we've got congressmen jumping up and down, wanting to change the Second Amendment. We even got Bloomberg saying we ought to alter the Constitution a bit. What's happening?
we probably need to alter Mr. Bloomberg. I think that's probably a lot less pernicious a thought than altering the Constitution. These guys are really over the top. They've been acting as if the Constitution didn't really make any difference. But when Bloomberg comes out and says it doesn't make any difference, that's really getting in your face, isn't it?
It is. It is. And this is, of course, we know New York's always been kind of the driving force behind this communist-style legislation. I've told people, Larry, over the years, anytime a communist regime takes over a country, they go after three classes of people in order. They go after the farmers first because they don't want you being able to feed themselves. They go after the intelligentsia next, anyone that's smart enough to know what they're doing, and third, they go after the veterans and law enforcement that are still loyal to the old regime. And I've also been accused of being anti-Semitic, but I just put up a wonderful series of films by the Jews for Preservation of Firearms Ownership, who told what happened when they get your guns. Over 100 million people slaughtered around the world in this last century in countries where they took the guns first.
Yep, that's exactly right. It is so clear, if you make any effort to look at what happened historically, that an unarmed people are in danger. The best that'll happen is something like England, or the United Kingdom more broadly, where they've confiscated virtually all the guns, and it's the most violent country. Well, it's the fourth most violent country in the world. The only more violent places are Honduras, El Salvador, and Jamaica. And then you get England, and it's supposed to be such a sweet and peaceful place, and admittedly, it does have a lower murder rate than we have here in the United States. It's a lot lower. But that's great if you don't mind having your nose broken, your belly punched, your money stolen, and violent crime of various kinds. It is the fourth most violent country in the world. So I don't think that's acceptable to Americans. We'd rather shoot a criminal than run from him, especially a guy my age. I'm too old to run.
Yeah, that's what I tell people. I'm too old to fight. I'll hurt you. I'll put your ass in the hospital. You want to swing on me? Now, the same thing has happened to Australia. Their crime rates have skyrocketed since they've taken the guns from the Australians.
Especially their armed robbery rate. So apparently the criminals didn't get the memo that they're not supposed to be carrying guns. That's right.
That's right. But now, and I mean, I have just, it's amazing to me that we've got Jewish senators like Dianne Feinstein, Barbara Boxer, that are pushing this gun control thing, this gun control issue. Feinstein even made the statement that she wants to take the guns from everybody, from all Americans.
Yep.
And I would think if I was Jewish, I would be all for. I would be right there with the Jews for Preservation of Firearms Ownership, pointing out that anytime they take your guns, that's when they start killing you. Now, they killed 60 million white Christian Russians when the Soviet Union took over and confiscated the guns. Not only that, they took the police that they used to confiscate the guns. After they got the guns confiscated, they took the guns from the police and killed them too.
Yeah, totalitarian regimes have a way of eliminating the various groups of armed people that have been used by the regime in taking and consolidating power. And it's really something that these lessons don't seem to be learned. And it's not just the Jews that are stupid, it's most of the rest of us as well that don't get it, that, hey, you take people's guns and you're setting the stage at a minimum for something like England, where it's become such a violent country, and where it might be even worse, like the Soviet Union or Nazi Germany, where a vicious regime turns on the people and turns out to be a murder machine. That's really not very acceptable.
What does it look like from your viewpoint? You're on the Hill. You're talking to these senators. You know, the Army and the Special Forces, they are not for this at all. I mean, they're trying to. There's thousands of them have stood up and said, no, this ain't the way to go. No, you're not taking our guns. And we've got some other people that you and I know that are doing good work, like Sheriff Richard Mack, who fought the Brady Bill and won. And he has organized the sheriffs to the Constitutional Sheriffs and Police Officers Association. He's got almost 300 sheriffs that say, no, we're not going to confiscate guns. We're not going to do this. And yet they're still pushing for that. And what I saw from
they're pushing.
Go ahead.
But I think they've got a real problem. If they tell the police, if they tell the military to do something as so clearly unconstitutional as confiscate people's guns, they're not going to find many willing to follow that order. I'm not sure that they would do better than maybe 15% at best. And then you've got to wonder what that 15% is going to be thinking when, hey, where are the guys? Where's everybody else? I don't believe everybody else is sick today, even though that they called in sick. This doesn't make sense. I just don't think, in reality, that the liberals get it, that if they give such an outrageous, unconstitutional, evil order as to confiscate people's guns, that they're going to have anybody to carry out their order. They're living in a bubble that they don't understand that, no, we are Americans. We don't do things like that here in this country, and neither do you. And it's just amazing that they're still even talking about it, as Dianne Feinstein does. But happily, she's been thwarted. She doesn't have the votes. We stopped her even on her semi-auto ban, which she called an assault weapons ban. She wasn't talking about confiscating machine guns. She was talking about making it illegal to own a defensive rifle, a semi-automatic, the kind of gun that Los Angeles Koreans use to defend their stores and their lives, some of her own constituents. And she would rather have them die at the hands of a mob that was on its way to confiscate, to steal, to destroy their stores, to kill them. And she would rather that they be unarmed, that they not have one of these defensive rifles. This woman is evil. That's the word I think we have to use. When somebody says, I want you to be defenseless in the face of my buddies, the evil criminals that are running around loose, well then, that person's evil too.
That's absolutely right. You know, it's not a matter, I've told people, you know, the First Amendment, that protects you. So whatever way you want to worship, you've got your choice. If you want to beat your head against the Wailing Wall, knock yourself out, just don't expect me to do that. If you want to get down on your hands and knees, stick your nose in the dirt and your ass up in the air, you know, I'll try to keep St. Bernard off of you. And if you want to get on your hands and knees and pray for a Cadillac, I'll try to put in a good word with God so you don't drop it on top of you. But the Second Amendment is how we protect those rights. And without it, we become slaves. Now, that to me, that is the intention. Now, we had Joe McCarthy the day. They made McCarthyism a bad word because he was trying to talk about the communists, and they're still with us. I mean, the communism didn't fall in the Soviet Union. They just moved to New York, it seems like.
Yeah. Where are all the communists? Well, Mayor Bloomberg, maybe you can enlighten us about where all the communists are.
Yeah. Larry, some of the...
That's the sad fact is that most of them are holding up in our universities.
Well, they took over the education system a long time ago. I call it the public fool system. And Obama and the mainstream media have been really using Sandy Hook to we don't even really know how many people were killed there and or who did it. I mean, the people that they're trying to blame were killed too. Why are they? Was this a deliberate attack? And now I felt like Waco, and I've done a lot of work on Waco. Why did they do that? And the information that's coming out is that they had some hackers there, and they tapped into some of Bush's drug running buddies. As I expose in my book Mystery Babylon on Operation Watchtower, so they sent word to go in and kill them all, and they resisted. It was like a psychological. Waco to me was a psychological operation against the American people. Say, see what those people made us do? They resisted our attack by force of arms. I mean, I don't know any other way to see that.
I think the thing that I take away from something like Sandy Hook is that was a gun-free zone. By law, by state law, by federal law, it was illegal to have a gun there. And therefore, the killer knew, just like the killer in Aurora knew, that if he went to a theater out there, there were 7 theaters in the immediate vicinity of the Aurora dirtbag. He could have gone to any one of the 7 on foot. He chose the one and the only one that had a sign up that said, "No guns." Isn't that fascinating? Killers may be evil, but they're not always flat stupid. And so he thought that one out, and he realized that he'd probably get a better body count there, just like the dirtbag up in Sandy Hook figured that he'd have a better body count at a school than he would, say, at a police station.
Yes, and I'm an old biker, Larry, so I mean everywhere I went in Arizona, any bike runs on it, I mean all the bikers had guns on their side. Nobody ever bothered us. Nobody ever tried to attack us. And I've never felt more safe than in an NRA meeting or a gun show where everybody's got weapons.
Exactly. You don't hear about horror stories happening there. It's pretty obvious why they're not going to. So why not extend that same conclusion to schools, to any other place where our legislators, in their lack of wisdom, have said, "Oh no, we don't want guns there. That's guns and children, guns and people don't mix." Well, actually, I think anti-gun legislators and people don't mix. I think that's perhaps what we need to take away from this.
Yeah, I think we ought to post signs in front of their house. We don't believe in the Second Amendment. You know, let's see who gets robbed the most. It's
Yeah, sure. I think that's
we have made some progress. The concealed carry in when I lived in Miami, people they were having robberies, carjackings left and right in Miami. That almost stopped when they passed concealed carry.
I remember that. That was really striking, and there was a related problem, and that was that people that would rent a car, people that would come in from out of state, presumably they didn't have a gun because they'd been flying. A lot of people don't realize that you can pack as luggage a firearm when you fly, but a lot of people don't know that, and so crooks would target folks that had a rental car, and they could tell who had a rental car because they had decals on them that made it plain that it was a rental car. And when that was obvious, finally the rental car company said, "Oh, I guess we better not make it so obvious that this is a rental car." And when they took away whatever it was that was the identifying mark, those hijackings and robberies went away. Because then that car just looked like anybody else's car. Isn't it interesting that when you say, "I'm defenseless, this is a gun-free zone at a school," or some other stupid thing like that, bad things happen?
Well, that's right. That's right. Now, why can't we? Let me ask you this. I mean, for somebody to try to void the Second Amendment, for somebody to do what Bloomberg is trying to do, or Dianne Feinstein, disarm everybody. It's almost like the banksters here that have been we've been bailing out, and they've been taking our money and taking our homes. Why can't we get anyone to prosecute these people? I mean, isn't treason still hanging the fence? I mean. This is treason.
Well,
you know, I took an oath. I took an oath to defend the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic. Why can't my police and everybody and they're supposed to be in law enforcement? Why can't they arrest these banksters or these politicians that are basically proposing anti-Constitution legislation? I mean, this is communism in action. I used to wonder how did communism, how did the 60 million people get killed in Russia? Well, they passed laws. They were treasonous.
Well, you're talking about the ruling class arresting itself, and obviously that's not going to happen. And until we decide that we've had it and we're not going to let these bums stay in office anymore, then this is the kind of thing that's going to continue unabated. So I think we've got a real problem, and it's essentially we the people that are tolerating these guys. We don't go and vote them out. We work and we work and we work harder and we pay more taxes and we suffer under more regulation and we're less and less free. And it hasn't occurred to us that, wait a minute, I'm the boss. We're the boss. What are these people doing? What do they think they're doing trying to tell me that I'm their slave? This is nuts. But that's exactly what's happening in this country, and we could put a stop to it at the next election.
We could if they told us. Now, I mean, I've gone through this. I believed that at one time, and I worked with Charles Collins in the Republican Party. And every time Charles got up to tell them we could buy back the Federal Reserve by their own charter, they cut all his microphones off. Every cameraman on stage turned their cameras off and pointed them at the ground. We saw that happen with Ron Paul. We've seen that happen with Governor Gary Johnson. And so as long as I mean, that was the reason, the way the government, or the way the media covered Waco is why I started the Free American. I mean, I just couldn't believe it, that they could be, well, we had to kill those 17 little children to save them from a child molester. I mean, that is a height of ridiculousness, and the media covering Feinstein and promoting her views and Bloomberg's views, that smacks of treason to me. Now, let me ask you this. We still buy guns here, and over 1 million Americans have got guns. What I am afraid of, and it is something Bill Clinton said, stroke of the pen, law of the land, pretty cool, huh? What if Obama just makes an executive order saying, yeah, the Constitution no longer applies, we got all these czars, they'll take care of you, the police will take care of you, and what if he turned the millions of Americans that, and they've got the addresses of everybody that bought a gun legally, what if he just signed a little confiscation order, executive order, and turned all of these gun owners into instant criminals? Now, the likelihood of that happening...
Well, Clay, I think that's why the expansion of the instant background check went down in flames, because we were able, over the course of some 4 months, to make the point that background checks don't keep guns out of the wrong hands, as they have been saying. In fact, there was even a study published in the Anti-Gun Journal of the American Medical Association a few years after they began background checks, and it concluded that, doesn't look like it had any impact on crime. So if you got something that doesn't reduce crime, which is its stated purpose by its advocates,
we don't want to get guns in the wrong hands.
Well, then why are we doing it? Well, obviously we're doing it to get a list of the good guys who own guns, so that when the day comes, when that crisis comes upon us, in the sort of the idea of David Axelrod, the buddy of the president, you never let a good crisis go to waste. Well, you've got what it takes to do what you need to do to confiscate the guns, because you've already got a list. And what they were doing was moving from everybody who's bought a gun in a gun store. She's already in the government database. It's illegal, but they're doing it anyway. We know that they're doing it, and they wanted to expand it to all the rest of gun sales. And we know that they are keeping that list because when a dealer starts and he applies to use a portal on the internet to do background checks, he's told by the feds, understand, I mean, they put this in writing, understand that when you use this portal, as opposed to, say, calling in the background check, which is really burdensome, it takes a lot of time, it's a mess, ties up your staff's time, understand that the names and addresses become the permanent property of the federal government. That's what that game was all about. Listen, I've got another talk show I'm scheduled for. I'm going to have to jump, but I'm so glad you're doing what you're doing, Clay. Keep up the good work at the Free American, buddy. I think you're the best.
I appreciate the work that you're doing. Any way I can help, I will. I do want to ask you one quick question here. What about the billions around of hollow point ammo that Homeland Security has stocked? What does that mean to us?
Well, they haven't given any good explanation for why they're doing that, especially when they already had 250 million already on hand. Very disturbing, Clay. I don't know that anybody has given a reasonable answer why they're doing it. But listen, we're going to have to leave it
all right,
there.
Sir. Thank you very much.
Got this other show coming in.
All right,
thanks
sir.
so much.
God bless you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
All right. We'll take phone calls. I'll take some phone calls now, and then I'm going to go back and tell you how deep the rabbit hole goes. Lady Horse says, do you think we should be talking the younger generation and teaching them the Constitution? They don't even get correct in history in school anymore. And absolutely, Lady Horse. And that is why, if you go to my website, you can see a little link there, a little banner ad for Timothy Bible College and the Little Red Schoolhouse. And I am the Director of Political Science for Timothy Bible College. And that's, yeah, we are trying, if we had, and I helped Dr. Jake Wade start this Little Red Schoolhouse almost 20 years ago. About the same time, I worked with Charles Collins to try to reform the monetary system here. If he had got to be president, we would have reformed it. Now, if you want to call in, folks, my numbers, the number to call is 855. This is an 800 number, 655-8453. That's extension 805, or you can call 347-688-2902. Both will put you online here, and love to talk to you. If we had started the Little Red Schoolhouse, and this was for homeschoolers, we wouldn't have had a Sandy Hook. We wouldn't have had a Columbine. That's right. The RNC cut off Mike in Maine, in Wisconsin, and every cameraman on stage, from Maine to California, they cut off the cameras, pointed them at the ground, and took a smoke break. So, and I went up to one news team. They were at Ross Perot's event in Dallas, and I said, look, Charles Collins, he's the first Republican to sign up for the presidency. He's sitting right here, right there at the next table. Why don't you come over and do an interview with him? They said, we can't. We can't. And I didn't understand then. I understand now. That's why, and frankly, I haven't voted since. It doesn't do any good. Governor Gary Johnson, now the ADL, and I've got links to the ADL. I've got links to, for all you people out there that think I'm anti-Semitic, I've got links to the gun owners, the Jews for Preservation of Firearm Ownership. Got links up there. They've got, I believe it's 4 films that tell you what happened when they take the guns. If you're Jewish and you are supporting Feinstein, you are supporting these gun grabbers, then you're a total idiot. You are a total idiot. The Jews, if you think you went through a Holocaust, which again is a lie, you know, you've been using the Zionists have been using this 6 million figure throughout history over and over and over again. It ain't true. Didn't happen. So, again, our numbers are 855-655-8453, extension 805, or 347-688-2902. And I'm going to tell you, folks, that I do need support. I do need help. I have computer repairs to do. I have all kinds of things that I need to do. I need your support. Aaron Russo was a friend of mine. I put him on the cover of my Free American magazine when he was running for governor. I was right there with him when he was running for governor. And as soon as he came out, and told you, as soon as his film came out, which I promoted, and as soon as he told you about his conversation with Nicholas Rockefeller, they killed him. Then he died of fast-acting cancer, like some of the other people that we've talked about. Aaron Zellman, Jews for Preservation of Firearms Ownership. He died. Funny how the good Jews died. Benjamin Friedman tried to tell you that the Zionists were behind World War I and World War II. Folks, I'm not being anti-Semitic. I don't blame the little grandmother there, even if her sons became doctors or lawyers. I don't blame her. She shouldn't be. We should all be equal. That says right up on my website. And I'm telling you this because I'm telling you that I need your support. I'm looking, I need help here. And I have tried to tell you that I don't care whether you're Jewish, Muslim, Christian, or pagan, as long as you don't steal, murder, or try to dominate others. I don't care if you're black, white, brown, or yellow. Be proud of your race. God made us all. I think we're all Americans, and Americans should protect America. The Vietnamese, the Iraqis, the Iranians, the Palestinians are simply trying to protect their countries and people. I say we should all say you're damn right we are protectionists, isolationists, constitutionalists, and free Americans. I don't want to be the only one.
Clay, we have another caller with us.
All right, sir.
Clay, we have another caller on the line.
Who we got?
Area code 734. You're on the air.
Hello.
Yeah, this is Franco from Richmond, Michigan.
What's your name again?
Hello?
Yes, sir. What's your name?
I'm Franco Clayton from the chat room.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yes, sir, I can.
Yeah, I got a new phone.
I can hear you. Go ahead.
Clayton, I wanted to get your take on the election of the new Pope Francis and his relationship to Argentina and shenanigans that he's known for.
Okay, I didn't catch that. I caught Argentina was the only thing I caught there. Who are you asking about?
The new Pope?
Newport?
The new Pope.
The new Pope.
I
don't. I have not researched him. I don't know. The Catholic Church is controlled by the Rothschilds, as far as I'm concerned. The Catholic Church is responsible, and they were found guilty. By the way, that's why the last Pope quit. They were found guilty by a common law court over in Brussels of genocide with the American Indians and the Indians in Canada. A group of citizens found them guilty here, and they were trying to say that they could confiscate their Catholic Church property, give it back to the people. But of course, that's not going to happen. And it's Catholic Church is it's pretty much run by the Black Pope, the Jesuits, which you might as well call them Jewish. They've got the same one world outlook, one world government. They lined the Vatican with the gold they stole from the American Indians. And I think they should be viewed as tyrants the same way as the New World Order, as well as the same as the congressmen that are trying to take your guns away. I don't think they're the good guys. I think they are hiding behind God. They got nothing to do with God. They work for Satan, not the American people, and not the people of the world anywhere.
I think you claim I am Catholic, and I do kind of feel that the Catholic Church is against communism and Marxism. But I want to get your take on it, and I thank you for your opinion.
Sure. Thank
God
you.
bless, and have a great day.
Thank you. I appreciate you calling in. All right. I'm not a fan of religiosity. If you want to hear what the Bible says, Bible is a history book, and it tells you. It told you about the whole chip that Aaron Russo told you about, the mark of the beast. It told you about the eighth beast. It told you to beware the Jews that say they're Jews but are not, or of the synagogue of Satan. Folks, that's what we've got, and the media ain't telling you the truth. So, if you want to call in, I'll listen to you. I'll answer your questions. And I urge you to make a donation to freedomslips.com. They are doing the right thing. All right. You know, folks, if you're not donating to me or Freedom Slips, you are making a huge mistake. If you buy any of the products that are advertised on the other stations here, you're not doing the right thing. You're simply not doing the right thing. This radio station is giving you a choice. It's giving you factual information. Make a donation. Doesn't have to be much. It could be anything. But if everybody gave $1 and we got 15,000 people listening, it's like if you sit back, you want somebody else to do the work for you, and yet you donated to the Republicans. $600,000 were donated to the Republicans. $600 million were donated for the last presidential campaign to the Republican Party for all their candidates and all that. You donated over $1 billion to two wings of the same bird. You gave it to a vulture. You gave it to a global vulture. Did anything change? Did you get anything better? Did you make any more money? You're still paying more for gasoline? You gave money to a corrupt administration. And the first half of this show, I told you about that. I told you about LBJ. I can give you a lot more on that. I don't think it matters there. You can call it Freedom's Lips or Freedom Slips, because if you don't donate, it is slipping away. Okay, use my name in vain. I'll just, here we go. We got somebody came into the chat room, Clay Beggar. You're ignored. I don't want to listen to anybody. You're taking my name in vain. You're nothing but a troll, so you guys can listen to them if you want. That I won't. I'll take these people out and put them on mute in a heartbeat. Now, folks, this radio station gave me the opportunity to talk to you. Support them. And if you support me, you send me a donation, I'll send you a PDF of one of my books, because the publishing company is controlled by the Zionists out there, the banksters out there, and Thomas Jefferson warned you, if you ever allow a bank to issue your money, the banks and the corporations that spring up around them will leave your children homeless in the land that we conquered. Now, let me go back to Johnson here for a moment and the Liberty. On June 3rd, 1967, 2 days before the Israelis attacked, the United States sent an aircraft carrier Intrepid through the Suez Canal with all its planes lined up on deck. Nasser thought this was an unnecessary show of force. The Egyptian people became furious. They lined the bank of the canal and threw old shoes at the carrier. At the same time, the Sixth Fleet flexed its muscles and prepared for a war situation. It was an excessive show of force by the United States. After Israel's victory, Nassau was disgusted with Johnson. He felt that Johnson was dishonest and had colluded with Israel to strike first and blame it on Egypt. He was suspicious of the He was suspicious of the UN ambassador Arthur Goldberg, an ardent Zionist. Goldberg had immediately backed Israel in the UN when it claimed that Egypt fired the first shot. Nasser accused Johnson of collusion, broke off diplomatic relations with the United States, ordered all Americans out of Egypt. Several other Arab states did the same. Soon, Johnson, already angered by the charge of collusion, had to watch the humiliating spectacle of 24,000 American men, women, and children being thrown out of the Middle East. Johnson never forgave and never forgot. After Egypt's humiliating defeat in the Six-Day War, Nasser attempted to resign, but massive street demonstrations and a vote of confidence by the National Assembly induced him to remain in his office. The Soviet Union immediately began replacing all destroyed war equipment and installed surface-to-air missiles along the Suez as a cover for Egypt's artillery installations. An important footnote to the Six-Day War is an incident that occurred in Yemen months earlier. In early 1967, fighting in Yemen still continued. One day they were shooting in Taiz in Yemen. Direction finders indicated that the two bazooka shots came from the headquarters of the United States Point 4 Aid Program, which was the CIA's cover organization. Yemeni government forces attacked the building, arrested 4 people inside. The safes were opened, and an enormous amount of documents were found and subsequently photographed by Egyptian intelligence experts. The United States was furious at the attack in the building and demanded the documents. They were returned 3 weeks later. By this time, their secrets were known. Many people in the United States military became hostile towards Nasser because of this event, and some believe that the Six-Day War was a form of retribution. Within 6 months after the Six-Day War, the UN Security Council called for a withdrawal of Israeli armed forces from territories occupied in recent conflict. In theory, the UN should enforce the resolution, but unfortunately, reality is much different. The sad truth is that the UN is unable to enforce much of anything without the support of the United States, and the United States has maintained a passionate attachment to Israel ever since Johnson was in office. Ironically, Resolution 242 was issued on the 4th anniversary of Kennedy's death, November 22nd, 1967. It's an extremely important document because virtually all disputes between Israel and the Palestinians and neighboring Arab states could be resolved by its enforcement. In addition, the Israelis managed to secure ambiguous legalistic wording for Resolution 242, which makes it even more difficult to enforce. However, the resolution remains a highly sensitive area for American presidents and politicians to Rome. Okay, let me skip back here. There is LBJ's family. Whoops, that one didn't show up.
Clay, we're still on the air.
All right, I'm just looking for something here. Excuse me about that. One of my things didn't show up. The genealogical and historical evidence strongly suggest that the 36th U.S. president and his wife were secretly Jewish. This is highly significant when one considers that President Johnson joined America and Israel at the hip, a policy that has now been in place for nearly 40 years, and a policy which most of the world does not understand or endorse. I've got that linked up on my website. You can see it. The killing of Kennedy put Johnson into power. The first thing Johnson did was recall the United States notes that the Jewish-controlled Rothschild, Federal Reserve Bank, Rockefeller Bank, Jacob Schiff-controlled bank, and Jacob Schiff is the Jew that financed the Marx and Lenin. And remember, again, we're not talking about all Jews. No, we're not. I'm not talking about all Jews. I'm talking about the elitists that put presidents in power, that kill presidents, that control the UN, that dispensed our nuclear secrets to create an enemy of sufficient power to cause it. The Russian people were never our enemy. The Iranian people aren't our enemy. The Iraqi people weren't our enemy. But they stood in the way of thousands of years of control of our elitists by elitists, some of which are Jewish, some of which aren't. And the Christian Zionists out there, Zionists are people that are in favor of one world government. That's why they tried to do the League of Nations. They failed. Now, folks, I'm telling you the truth. And I've got books. The Mystery Babylon is over 500 pages. It's over 500 pages. You can read that tonight. Well, maybe take you a few days. But you can read it simply by sending a donation. This is not something, and I don't owe anybody anything anymore. They have managed, well, maybe I still owe that $750,000 hospital bill. That's possible. I didn't pay it, and ain't gonna pay it. That's it. R3, you're still an idiot. Just thought I'd tell you that. And Clay at freeamerican.com is where to send a donation. If you go to my website, Free American, you can click on the links for Revolution. Make a donation there. Keep Revolution on the air. Keep Revolution on the air. Keep me on the air. With your support, we can do this. And I'm going to bring up, we've had people attack everybody that's trying to do something. Larry Pratt's probably in a good spot Good spot. You've actually got a friend there? R3, you got a friend, Chris? Who's that? You don't have any friends. Alright. But let me just ignore you. I mean, I don't have to look at you. Alright. R3's ignored. Now, the rest of you folks out there, you're make a donation to Revolution. We are doing something. We are making progress. We are R3 is who you need to support. God bless you, and thank you for listening.
You still there, Clay?